Welcome to the Insight Meditation community of Charlottesville, Virginia. You can find all of our program offerings and information about our Sangha at www.imeditation.org. We meet weekly on Tuesday evenings at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, currently on the Zoom platform for meditation and a Dharma talk given by one of our teachers. We also meet daily at noon Eastern Time on Zoom for sitting practice. We hope you can join us.
Let us vow to bear witness to the wholeness of life, realizing the completeness of each and everything. Embracing our differences, I shall know myself as you and you as myself. May we serve each other for all our days, here, there, and everywhere. Let us vow to open ourselves to the abundance of life, freely giving and receiving. I shall care for you, for the trees and stars, as treasures of my very own. May we be grateful for all our days, here, there, and everywhere. Let us vow to forgive all hurt caused by ourselves and others, and to never condone hurtful ways. Being responsible for my actions, I shall free myself and you. Will you free me too? May we be kind for all our days, here, there, and everywhere. Let us vow to remember that all that appears will disappear in the midst of uncertainty. I shall sow love, here, now. I call to you. Let us together live the great peace that we are. May we give no fear for all our days, here, there, and everywhere. Amen. Before we pause for a few moments, I wanted to share with you the theme of the talk for tonight. I was thinking about the season of peace and joy to the world, and thought it'd be good to do a little talk on exploring that together. And so here's what I wrote that's sort of the summary of our talk. A heart of peace and joy is simple and always available. In these days of challenging circumstances, we can become overwhelmed and forget to remember. In tonight's offering, we will explore together the Buddha's teachings on the gladness of heart that is a natural law. The gladness of heart that is a natural law and the birthright of each one of us. We will consider and together practice ways to deepen, open to, receive, absorb, and be filled with that goodness. So that's how I hope we will play together tonight. So tonight, I wanted to speak some about mudita, the practice of sympathetic joy. Here's this season of joy to the world. And the practice of mudita is sympathetic joy. In the sutta that I've listed there, the Satana Sutta, the Buddha lays out a whole sequence, very specifically, one after the other, of steps that lead to full awakening. And the first step begins with a recognition of one's own virtue. And he just kind of lays it out, starting with awareness and recognizing one's virtue. Then this, then this, then this, then this. The steps to full awakening. So just goodness, just delight in one's virtue is the beginning of awakening. Well, I could end the talk right there, couldn't I? Just delight in one's virtue is the beginning of awakening. And he's not, of course, talking about the sensual delight of lots of Christmas cookies or donuts. He's talking about delight in one's own goodness. And I think about so many of the suttas where the Buddha would end up teaching, and at the end, the monks would all say, sadhu, 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 sadhu. And it would say, the monks were delighted. And it's that quality when you hear something that touches into that heart of virtue or that heart of goodness, you just sort of light up and you respond with a happy heart yourself. It's like, oh, yeah, right. In so many ways, the suttas, name, the monks responding in that way. And we can ourselves, we can kind of get caught up in YouTube sometimes where we're looking at even those just sweet little videos of animals. My husband showed me one today of this mama cat who had adopted, I think it was like 6 little baby hedgehogs whose mother had died. He showed me this picture of this cat with the little hedgehogs nursing on her, and it's like, what are those little animals? They're little spiky things. But that, and it's just like, oh, that's so nice, and it's that part of our own being that just responds with gladness about goodness. Mudita, the official word for sympathetic joy, means unselfish joy or joy in the good fortune of others. I take joy in your goodness. I take joy in your good fortune. May this joy continue. May your goodness continue. May it grow. May it lead to your happiness. May it lead to your liberation and the liberation of all. That's the practice of mudita, or sympathetic joy. You probably know this word. I learned it from my friend Jerry, the Jewish word kaveling. And I love that word because it sort of feels like what it means. It's like to be delighted, to be extraordinarily pleased, to be bursting with pride in the accomplishment and the goodness of another. So the Yiddish word kaveling. So kaveling in one another. It's like Bill was cavelling in us as a community, to be delighted in the goodness of one another. So it's a practice for us, especially at this time of year, this time of year, peace on earth, joy to the world. Peace on earth, joy to the world. As I look at the news, it seems like much in the world seems less attentive to goodness and peace and joy than to conflict and hatred and division and grumpiness in the news. I noticed that in addition, there's this German word that you probably also know called, I think it's pronounced Schadenfreude. Schadenfreude. And it means, let's see what it means. The experience of pleasure, joy, or self-satisfaction that comes from learning of or witnessing the troubles, failures, or missteps of another, because the observer now feels better about their personal identity and self-worth. Um, we can sort of notice it. Sometimes the news, there's this Schadenfreude in the news where there's this little headline about somebody who got COVID, because they weren't vaccinated or something like that. And there's a little Schadenfreude, a little bit like, good for them. And that's the opposite of mudita. I even noticed that, there's these Life is Good clothing line, and there's actually a Schadenfreude clothing line. So we certainly can practice the opposite of mudita. Sympathetic joy, it's on the surface. It's a no-brainer. Hatred never ceases by hatred. Only love. Only love heals hatred. Relationships work best when people are kind, thoughtful, generous. So sympathetic joy. Classically, with sympathetic joy, we start, as with loving kindness, with a loved one, moving on to a benefactor, moving on to a friend, moving on to a neutral person, moving on to maybe someone who's a bit more difficult to feel happiness for, and then moving on to an enemy. That's sort of the classic sequence of the practice of sympathetic joy. May you be happy. May your goodness. I take joy in your goodness. I take joy in your good fortune. May this joy continue. May it grow. May your goodness grow. May it lead to your happiness. May it lead to your liberation. Nevertheless, I'm going to take a little bit of a turn here on this talk, because it may not be going quite where you might imagine we're going. So this practice of mudita, what we can miss is that it's not something that we are needing to be, but a skill that is not only a lifetime's inquiry and unfolding, but one that begins with practice in uncovering joy, gladness in our own hearts and minds, and in relation to our own being and our own goodness. So joy, taking joy in our own goodness. And the sympathetic joy overflows from that place. So it's not something we're trying to kind of put into ourselves so much as uncover this joy, this gladness in our own goodness, so that it may overflow. Ajahn Suchito, he says, there's no need for pushing or commanding or pummeling ourselves into this kind of awakening, what he refers to as the law and order approach to our practice. And he says, we don't have to do that. All we need to do is pay attention. All we need to do is pay attention. We can make anything, even maybe even especially, I don't know, our spiritual practice into a self-improvement project. I should be better at offering sympathetic joy. I should be better at being glad. I'm not good enough. Indeed, I can even imagine that it is okay to have unkindness and a judgmental mind about my own troubles, failures, limitations, or missteps. It's okay to criticize myself, just not others. So that there is an I who is just sort of somehow worthy of criticism or worthy of disparagement. There's an I who needs to get somewhere before I can be glad in my own goodness. I need to be better somehow. And so Ajahn Suchita refers to that as the sort of law and order approach to spiritual practice that is not at all what the Buddha is intending in the Satana Sutta when he says this is the basis of awakening. I've spoken of this before. I had a Christmas card some time ago that said something like, peace on earth begins with simple kindness. Peace on earth begins with simple kindness, and joy to the world happens one heart at a time. Joy to the world happens one heart at a time. It's the Buddha's message. Joy to the world happens one heart at a time, beginning with one's own heart. This is from my teacher, John Wellwood. He says, most people in our society share a peculiar belief. We imagine that we should be able to establish a rich and satisfying relationship with someone, even if we have never learned to relate to ourselves in a rich, satisfying way. We believe that a successful relationship mostly depends on finding the right person or doing the right things. We often don't see that how we relate to another inevitably follows from how we relate to ourselves, that our outer relationships are but an extension of our inner life, so that we can only be as open and present with another as we are with ourselves. So peace on earth begins with simple kindness, and joy to the world happens one heart at a time, our own heart. So the practice of all of the Brahma Viharas, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity, begins perhaps even especially for us as Westerners. I'm not sure if that especially is really true, but maybe it is. It begins with directing this quality of sympathetic joy to ourselves and the human beingness that is continually unfolding in this very body, this very life. Not some other improved version that I'm going to be tomorrow, but this one. Not so much to achieve something, but to clear away a misunderstanding, to clear away a confusion. So the practice is clearing, if you will, kind of clearing the leaves. So I have all these leaves on my porch. It's like just clearing them away, clearing the confusions away so that we can see the goodness and delight in the goodness of our own being. Here's a contemplation from Sharon Salzberg I wanted to inquire into a little bit. Here's a quote from her. Toward that end, fullness of sympathetic joy, toward that end, a traditional Buddhist contemplation practice of mudita is to think of the good within us, the good we have done, the potential for good we can activate. We reflect on the skillful or wholesome actions we've done, or the times we've had difficult choices to make in areas of morality, and on the times we have tried to be truthful or loving. We reflect on the times we have cared enough to reach out beyond our timidity, on the ways in which we've tried to help someone instead of just carelessly letting the chance go by. My husband at dinner time was asking me what I was going to talk about, and I told him this. And he said, without even reading that particular quote, he said, wow, it's difficult. Yeah. So I wanted to invite you to do a little contemplation. I want to read to you the Sharon's quotes and just invite you to kind of take each line, and maybe I'll try to put it in the chat box. I don't know if I can or not because my chat box is doing something goofy. But to just really sit with each question and see if you could write something for each one. And rather than just sort of quickly filling in an answer, let the question reverberate with you a little bit. Let it bring you home. Not so much as something you should do or you should do better, but just kind of see if, like with the monks who listened to the Buddha, where they went sadhu, can you recognize, even in small ways, these qualities of goodness? So let yourself feel the movement of the question, like it's a ball moving in slow motion or wind moving. And notice the question, notice where it lands, what its effects are. They're kind of homing questions, not bonanza questions. To regard mudita as being relevant only on, this very rare occasion. So that's a bonanza kind of thing. So just to help. Let me see if I can get this into the chat box. Maybe I can, and maybe I can't. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Yeah. So taking each question in So just see if you could write something for each one. So the first one, the good you have done. What is the good you have done? I'll probably go a little bit too quickly through this, so you might um, copy these out, and contemplate them even more later. But the second one is the potential for good you have activated and do activate in others. So your own goodness in activating goodness in others. Maybe on the times you have you have made difficult choices in areas of morality or speech or action. And again, remember that these are not bonanza questions. These are simple questions. So we're not inquiring into where we might have won the Nobel Peace Prize, just small moments when you've made difficult choices. I had to wait an extraordinarily long time in a store yesterday. And there were moments of difficult choices. By the way, while you're doing it, I just want to note that writing it down is a goodness. It's a commitment on your part to bowing to and saying, yes, this is true. To really declare there is this goodness. And the times you have tried to be truthful or loving. And the times you've cared enough to reach out, even though you were kind of timid and uncertain. Maybe to speak or to act when you were brave. Or the times that you stepped back to allow others to shine, to shine. On the ways in which you've tried to help someone instead of just ignoring or being careless, letting the chance go by. So again, Sharon Salzberg, the quote is from the book, The Force of Kindness. Um, and again, these questions are from Sharon's book, where she says, toward the end of awakening, the traditional Buddhist contemplation practice is to think of the good within us, the good we have done, the potential for good we can activate. We reflect on the skillful or wholesome actions we've done, on the times we've had difficult choices to make in areas of morality, and on the times we have tried to be truthful or loving. We reflect on the times we have cared enough to reach out beyond our timidity, on the ways in which we've tried to help someone instead of just carelessly letting the chance go by. A word on resistance. Sometimes when we do a practice like this, we can find ourselves just really resisting it. Either by saying, nope, nothing there, no, or no, I don't want to do this. And there I would just invite us each, when we get caught in that little um, uh, tornado, to inquire into the goodness of the resistance itself. That resistance wouldn't be there if it didn't serve, at least at some point in your life, some useful function. Yeah. So that the resistance itself, you can contemplate the goodness of the resistance itself. Maybe it's trying to help you be safe in some way. So just a couple of minutes, it's kind of short. I really would encourage you to continue this contemplation. But what do you notice? Anybody? Anyone want to share anything that you notice as you inquire? That's interesting. Is there any quality of gladness that arises? Any quality of ease? Any quality of curiosity? What do you notice? Mudita, joy in the goodness. See if you can let yourself feel any gladness or happiness of heart in doing that, no matter how small. And then what I will close with is, I find it, the David White poem, Everything is Waiting for You. He says, your great mistake is to act as the drama as if you were alone, as if life were a progressive and cunning crime with no witness to the tiny hidden transgressions. To feel abandoned is to deny the intimacy of your surroundings. Surely even you at times have felt the grand array, the swelling presence and the chorus, crowding out your solo voice. You must note the way the soap dish enables you, or the window latch grants you freedom. Alertness is the hidden discipline of familiarity. The stairs are your mentor of things to come. The doors have always been there to frighten you and invite you. And the tiny speaker in the phone is your dream ladder to divinity. Put down the weight of your aloneness and ease into the conversation. The kettle is singing even as it pours you a drink. The cooking pots have left their arrogant aloofness and seen the good in you at last. This is for Linda. All the birds and creatures of the world are unutterably themselves. Everything is waiting for you. So, peace on earth begins with simple gladness. Joy to the world happens one heart at a time. Your heart, this heart, little bits. May you be happy.